And sometimes just changing that pattern,
Right.
the way it's set, can dramatically change the look. And only, from experience, only some certain patterns really kind of change a lot of that labor cost. Like, going from a brick stack to a vertical stack, most tile guys are really not going to charge any differently. But when you get into some of the intricate details, that's where your pricing can change. So you could be even specific on where to use.
Yeah.
Maybe small.
Like herringbone's going to cost you more in labor typically. So maybe do an accent herringbone instead of the whole backsplash herringbone as an example, where you can, get that elevated look, maybe above a range. How do you get the luxury designer look without that designer price tag? Luxury has more to do with quality and strategic execution than it does just purely bottom line dollar amount.
Yeah, material finishes, applications, those are things that can truly adjust that perception or perceived value in your project, really raising the value price tag in the end and affecting your ROI.
So today we're going to be sharing with you different tips, tricks, and strategic framework to how to approach your projects, resulting in the designer luxury look, but not necessarily the designer luxury price tag.
So how do you get, that high price designer feel without, a 5-figure, 6-figure budget? Because not everybody can do that.
Right. Well, a great example is tile and tile application. There's so many creative ways you can actually apply tile and use colors to change the overall aesthetic or feel. Colors of grout, complementary, cabinet or wall colors. But if we're purely just looking at tile from an application standpoint, you can take, let's just say, for example, like a 3x12 or 4x12 subway tile, standard subway tile. And you can lay that tile in a variety of different applications to create a completely different look. So if you don't want to just do a very classic subway, traditional subway, almost similar to like a brick stacking pattern, you can use herringbone, or you can lay them all vertically. You could line them up all horizontally. Everything you do in that regard is going to produce a different result. You can also consider using multiple colors. Like if we're playing on the same subway idea, you can inlay patterns to give an elevated look without actually changing the tile. You're just changing the color. So let's say you're doing a shower wall and you don't just want one solid color. You might want to cycle in an accent color within it, maybe every, 8 to 10 rows. And you can apply that to almost create like a block function, or you can color block within, an accent wall, or different ideas like that. Not to get too far down the rabbit hole, but
and sometimes just changing that pattern,
right,
the way it's set, can dramatically change the look. And only, from experience, only some certain patterns really kind of change a lot of that labor cost. Like, going from a brick stack to a vertical stack, most tile guys are really not going to charge any differently. But when you get into some of the intricate details, that's where your pricing can change. So you could be even specific on where to use. Yeah. Maybe small.
Like herringbone's going to cost you more in labor typically. So maybe do an accent herringbone instead of the whole backsplash herringbone as an example, where you can, get that elevated look, maybe above a range. Yeah. So you can play with your budget a little bit. It's not just about buying the most expensive tile and assuming that's going to equate to the most valuable return. You can approach it with a little creative edge and how you can take that more affordable tile and creatively apply it to elevate the whole look, and not necessarily break the bank doing it. Another big factor when it comes to tile is grout. You can take a stunning tile and ruin it with the wrong grout color. It almost was like a very farmhouse trend to take like a white subway as an example and overlay it with a black grout. That's definitely not on trend now. I mean, a more elevated look would be to match your grout with your tile. It's going to create the illusion of higher ceilings and more of a grand, just a grand result. A grander result. So another thing to consider. I mean, we've seen DIYs where the grout is just all the wrong color, and we've used the same tile application with a different grout. It gets you a completely different look. It's much more sophisticated, elevated. It feels more on trend, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the tile is the most trending tile. So that's a good tip for like investors too. If you're coming into a project and maybe you're only upgrading a portion of the house, I mean, you can still complement different tiles by just making sure you're elevating the overall look.
Yeah. And, it's kind of to circle back on some of the cost of, the material, because the material side's, the cost of the material is important, but you can take a lesser expensive tile and dress it up to be and look a whole lot more expensive and a whole lot more elevated and elegant. Even if you do want to get some of that more expensive tile, like taking, a smaller tile and just dressing it up with that niche section that gets framed out, that might be a little bit more higher end, but it brings up the level of everything else, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Like I've done multiple shower projects, but where I will do like a basic subway, which is much more affordable, and I might change the orientation of the layout. Like some might be vertical, some might be, double block to create squares, or just different applications with the subway. And then I will inlay like a luxury marble. So I might put marble on the floor or etch out just a space of marble, like in the master, maybe around your plumbing fixtures, trim it out, with marble trim. That's just one idea. But again, you could also do the same thing. Like if your budget doesn't permit marble, you could do the same thing with maybe a ceramic penny round on the floor, or 1x1s that have a subtle pattern. And you could then match that color in a different subway and bring that up on the wall to create a different type of accent. So there's
making it an accent piece.
Yeah, the options truly are unlimited. It's all about how creative you really want to get. But really it's making sure you're thinking about it from the standpoint of, it doesn't have to just be, we buy $20 a square foot tile to get that, $15,000 luxury look in this bathroom. Expensive materials do not guarantee that expensive look. It's really about quality, execution, and how you really apply it.
Application. Okay, so, we've talked about, like the tile, but what are other ways, like trim, millworks, different things like that, baseboards, crown moldings?
Yes, millworks or millwork in general is a great way to elevate a look without having to, over splurge. Example being, let's say you are doing a flip, or maybe you're just doing a moderate renovation of some sort. You can add door headers around your doors, trim around your doors, and now your 7-foot doors are going to look like 8-foot doors. As an example, you're probably not going to get a full 12-foot on your header or 12-inch on your header, but it's a way to create a more luxurious finish, and it's economical, material.
And again, you can get into different materials for that, and material use for areas is where you can really save and manage that budget, because you have hardwood, you have MDF, there's some that are even plastic.
And I've noticed, like, as much as we've moved and all the different architecture, different places, like in certain areas of the country, millwork is much more valued than in other areas. Typically, I've seen more historical buildings and just older areas, have a little more history and a little more craftsmanship. As we ventured further out west, I have seen less and less of that. It's not as regular.
There's not so much of the big ornate ones.
I mean, the ornate has a lot of like the European influence, but even like the colonial builds have, windows. Almost all windows are going to have wood casing around them. Versus if you go to New Mexico and you have like a lot of Indian influence and adobe, you're not going to see that same architectural feature.
Sure.
But I digress. Point being, you can elevate a space using molding. Like, crown molding is sort of in and out. It fades depending on design trends. I think it's a nice, classic, traditional investment that's, going to hold its value over time. Baseboards, also scale of your baseboards is important. You don't want, 12-foot walls or 12-foot ceilings, even 10-foot, and little squatty
little
baseboards.
1-inch, 2-inch baseboard.
Yeah,
it throws your scale completely off.
It'll look cheaper too.
It will.
So if you have a 10-foot ceiling, let's say, you probably need to be closer to the 8 inches on your baseboard to really give it that grandeur, elevated look. Just as an example.
It helps to just extend, like bring the height and bring your eyes up throughout the entire space. Yes,
it can completely elevate a room without being solely dependent on a budget. And then, of course, you can do wainscoting on the walls. And a lot of that is going to lend to the architecture. You'll see it in design trends. But from purely just trying to get that luxury look, if it lends to whatever you're building out, then I would recommend it too. I mean, it's a minimal investment if done right. And, again,
that key is, done right and making sure, like, for your baseboards, for example, trying to make sure that it looks seamless across the floor. Like you don't want to see big waves and gaps, and that cheapens the look of what you were trying to accomplish.
Or if you can't cut a 90-degree on the corner, like you're going to take a beautiful corner and turn it into a disaster with a huge gap. I wouldn't say anything really specific that I could think of. I mean, wainscoting walls,
but that's very
door headers make the biggest dramatic, and not just above a door, but headers above
windows.
Windows, walkways, openings. Like if you have an opening, from one room to the next, and it's just drywall, you could wrap that in millwork and really elevate it, give it a header. And it totally dresses it up. It's going to give a more formal feel and look. And people notice that. Even if the walls and the millwork are all the same color, people who will value that and perceive it as a value are going to notice that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to, let's say, have a bunch of different colors in a room, just adding that little bit of architectural detail with the millwork and all the same color is going to give enough contrast to the eye to look very sophisticated and elevated.
Okay, so we've talked about tile, we've talked about millworks and trims and things, ways you can use those, but so you've done some of that. Where areas maybe to avoid, or how do you determine I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do this?
Like where to allocate.
I guess.
I mean, if we're taking it from like a large picture, big picture of a whole house, let's say, and maybe you're rehabbing or redesigning, I would focus on like your biggest problem areas, your biggest, what feels dated or looks dated or even incomplete. I mean, we've seen, homes that get half redone and half not. So then immediately you're like, okay, I need to focus on what hasn't been done at all versus what's already been done. That would be step one.
Yeah.
Like, what's the primary pinpoint? So let's narrow it down for me and I can speak to it a little better.
I guess, like, what are areas that kind of anchor and bring the whole house together that, if this isn't cohesive, then none of it will be cohesive.
I would say possibly a living room, yes, but more like the focal point of the space. So if you're looking at a whole house, you're going to spend most of your time in your kitchen and your primary living area. So that would be the dominating decision-making space. But if you're narrowing it down to one room, then what's the focal point of that room?
Okay.
And then you can kind of back into that. Your focal point is where you could spend more attention to create a little more of a luxury feel, because it's going to like draw the eye. If you have a, feature fireplace, you don't want to necessarily just assume, oh, the fireplace is already done, I'm going to focus on this opposing wall and do a big millwork accent on this wall. That may not make sense. It might make more sense to just focus on the already dominating focal point of the room and give it a little bit of an improvement. And it can have a more dramatic feel, if that makes sense.
Okay. Are there, like, I guess, pieces that go into a room that, maybe I don't need to splurge so much on this and versus I do, like, say in the bathroom, like, the faucets, the pieces like that, those faucets can range anywhere from, $200 to, I've seen some that are $1,200, and that doesn't necessarily equate, does it?
No. Yeah. I mean, you can definitely get at that designer elevated luxury look without buying all those specific brands. You can focus on like finish materials. So if you love a really, luxury brand and a like a brass finish, you can start focusing on, okay, I want to find something that's comparable in the same finish. It's going to give you that same luxury look without necessarily the price tag. That would be a good one. Plumbing fixtures.
Mirrors, lighting fixtures.
Make sure you're scaling your mirrors correctly. So scale is like very, very important in interior design and also in creating a luxury finish. If you have, let's say you have a vanity that's 36 inches wide and a wall that is, I don't know, let's say 60 inches long. You want your mirror above your vanity to be proportionally scaled to the width of the vanity and scaled to the height that you have on the wall from the top of the vanity to the
bottom of your light fixtures.
Yeah, bottom of the light fixture. Like, I usually do between 2 to 3 inches on each. It really depends. But just to give you an idea, if you have, a 36-inch vanity and you're putting a
48-inch wide mirror, it's not going to look right.
A what?
A 48-inch wide mirror.
Yeah, that would be too big. But too small is gonna look cheap, unfinished. So it is a way you can elevate the look, give it more of a grandeur look. It's gonna bounce more light in the room. It's gonna enhance all the brightness and that luxury feel, and it's going to make the room feel bigger. Ceilings are going to feel taller. That's a simple way to create that luxury. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you can do, techniques that you can apply that are going to give you that luxury feel.
It's the smaller touches a lot of times, but necessarily that small touch, those small details don't always have to be the most expensive thing.
Agree.
To get the same feel and look. And there's just so many different ways as you get into different rooms and different areas, different parts of the country, even where, those touches look and hit better, or may not be as necessary. But
sometimes it can blow your budget too.
Yeah, if you're trying to really make it over the top, too many details, too many different materials, trying to get that over the top look, sometimes you spend a whole lot more than you really are ever going to get out of it.
I mean, I know recently we were just talking about a front elevation of a house that has too many things going on, too many finishes. They've got brick and stone and traditional shingles and metal roof accents. And, it's just like becomes so much happening that it wasn't necessary. You could have solidified and maybe done some accents without having to, throw everything at the wall at the same time.
Sometimes it's easy to see sometimes when it's almost like trying too hard.
Yeah, like I want this house to feel very expensive. And so then they think,
so I'm going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at it.
Doesn't always equate to that is the point. So key takeaways for today. It's more important to consider creative options to get that elevated luxury designer look. It's not purely just about spending the luxury dollar, to get the look.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you have to do something big and huge and grand. Sometimes it's the small touches, there's those small details that really elevate a space.
Yeah.
So
classic is classy, and there's an element to a traditional approach to design that will be tried and true.
If you like what you heard today, want to follow along, keep following along. Y'all make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, follow along with us on social, on the website, and we'll just keep sharing with y'all. Look forward to seeing y'all next time.
Thanks for listening.